Hello everyone. I hope you guys are having a great day. So for today's video, I am going to go over my round 4 at US Team Amateurs 2024. For your information, I will put the link to the description down below. So, I think that this round is probably the most interesting for myself and the team since quite a few things happened during the round. It was also the longest have in the entire tournament, and definitely one of the longest games I've had so far. The game went on for like probably around 5 hours, 4 to 5 hours. So, without further ado, let's get into the game. So, I have white against a fairly strong opponent, 2168, and I am again determined to win since the draw that I had in round 2. But it seems that things always go against my way when I'm white against stronger players. So I go with my normal start and I play d4. And my opponent played f5 going into the Dutch. I was shocked because this is probably the first time I've ever faced this in classical chess. And I did not expect it to come from a higher rated player. From what I know, the Dutch usually allows white to have very good positions, and I have pretty good results against it. However, it is played so rarely in classical chess that I don't study for it. And one thing I didn't realize is that this opening is actually very hard for white to break through if white doesn't know the middle game ideas, which was what I realized after the game. So for this game at least, I went with what I usually play against the Dutch. So I play c4, and then knight to f6, knight to c3, and g6. This is probably the mainline Dutch, if I remember correctly. Going for fianchetto bishop and playing for d6 and e5 ideas. And here I was in between two systems. One is the standard Queen's Gambit setup, which involves the bishop on f4, or you can say like a better London, since I don't have a pawn on. I have a pawn on c4 instead of c3, and the other Ireland setup, which my whole preparation involves around that setup. And so normally when I play against the Dutch, I don't fianchetto unless it transposes. However, for this game, I decided to go for the G3 setup since it is what I am most familiar with, at least for the past year that I have prepared. So I play G3 and Bishop G7, Bishop G2, castles, Knight F3, D6, and castles, and here play C6. I think so far everything is theory, and I think I kind of understand that. But here the main problem arises. So when I play this, I didn't really think too far because I thought that I didn't have to. I can figure it out the ideas. However, now I actually don't know where to put my dark square bishop. And had earlier I played bishop g4, bishop f4, and not g3, at least no more ideas going into the middle game because I play. That's why I mainly play against the Dutch in blitz and probably even rapid. However, now this variation requires precision on piece placement, and I play bishop f4, which is still technically fine. However, my bishop is now being a little awkward since all it does is stopping e5, and there's no square for it to retreat. And my opponent went queen e8, which of course is the main idea because the whole point again is to play e5. And for some reason, I did not react properly to it, and I played queen d3, which turns out to be a mistake. One of the top moves by the engine was d5, which I did think about, and that was the most straightforward way to stop e5. However, I wanted to play e4 instead, which turned out to be fine as well. However, I have to play it right away. but it goes through a lot of complication. So say if d5, then e5 is not possible because I just take, and now there's a weakness on d6. So say captures, and knight bd7, it is completely fine. The drawback is that now the knight has c5 and e5 outposts, but in return, this pawn is will be forever become a weakness. And if I am able to open the file with e4, then I will have a target to play on. Or here I could play e4 right away. So then f takes e4, knight to g5, and d5 here. The lines go pretty far, and it's actually really complicated. So I probably would not play e4. But queen d3 is a mistake because I actually don't have time to prepare it. As after knight h5, now e4 becomes a bad move. Because if I go e4 now, then after captures, and captures, black captures my bishop and I capture back. Now I have a very weak pawn on f4 that, I mean, and my center is getting very vulnerable because now my queen is actually guarding pretty much everything. And I probably don't know what to do here. Sure, now I stop e5, but it's still not very great, I don't think. Like bishop g4, and I really don't like this position. So after knight h5, I thought for a little bit here. And actually, no, my opponent actually spent 13 minutes on this move on knight h5. So he really thought through it. I spent 8 minutes here looking at options. And I wanted to go queen d2, and it's actually a good move by the engine. However, in humorous perspective, I went queen d3, so I really don't want to go back queen d2. So I went bishop d. Is the only move that kind of stood out to me after all. But now simply e5. And of course, there's now a threat of e4, and actually taking the pawn doesn't really do anything. So I decided to keep the tension for a couple of moves and went for e4 right away instead. But now there's suddenly a lot of tension in the center, and I don't really have any initiative anymore. This position is now equal. In fact, it's slightly better for white, like a slight edge. So he went knight a6, and now here threatening to capture on d4 and go knight c5, or even better, knight b4. So since I know he's gonna capture anyway, so I just capture on d5, and then he captures on e5, and here I made kind of inaccuracy, which you can see in the arrow. I play rook a1, which seems like a natural move. However, it actually doesn't do anything because you see black can actually just lock it with f4. Funny enough. So what I should have done is here I should have captured a pawn. But I didn't want to do that because I don't want to allow bishop f takes f5 with tempo. But here, actually after queen e5, white is actually completely fine. And now, sure, white gets a tempo and gets a rook out. But now I have a target to play on, which is the pawn on e5. And say after if my opponent takes with the g pawn, which tries to threaten e4, I can just retreat to e2. And the reason for retreating to e2 is that I can keep an eye on c4, so that when bishop e6 is played, I don't have to play b3. But here, rook e1 actually doesn't make a lot of sense. So now, bishop e6 is actually kind of a tempo, because now rook d8 comes with a tempo attacking on my queen. So now I do need to do something. So queen e2 is definitely kind of not a great move I want to make, because actually I think after queen e2, my opponent just played f4. And during the game, I was really scared of the f4 ideas. Which, now I look at and why pawn takes f5 is just a pretty good move. Because, again, it leaves it leaves me my position open so I can attack the 2 pawns in the center. But here I just decided to go for so that when rook d8 is played, I can retreat the queen back. And here you play rook d8, which is a very obvious move. And here I play queen c2, which actually I will fix it and I will not make it as a mistake. So in my perspective, it was a mistake. However, after I look at the engine, it's saying that queen c2 is better than queen b1. Queen b1 is just actually much worse, funny enough. And I kind of don't understand why. Because here, the reason I don't like queen c2 is it just allows knight b4, which I actually had a ton of vision on it. I did not look at knight b4 at all. I only look at knight c5 for some reason. But here, after knight b4, queen b1, white is actually fine. Like, white is still worse, but it's just like a minus 0.4, minus 0.5 instead of almost minus 1. Like, say, in this position, if I play queen b1 right away, it's actually almost minus 1. Funny enough. But here, after knight b4, queen b1, knight to d3 is a mistake, according to the engine. And here, I had 2 rook moves, rook d1 and rook e2. Note here that rook e3 is just straight out a bad move because of simply knight e5. And now my pieces are cramped and I will have to move my rook again after f4. So that is not a move. I thought for 13 minutes here, and then for some reason I went rook e2. Which is a bad move. It's hard to say why it's a bad move, but the main reason is because, again, I haven't taken this pawn. So actually the rook doesn't do anything on this e file. Like, because of this next move of f4. Now my rook on e2 is just awkward. Now it actually can't move. It's like a joke. And so here, what happens after rook d1? I didn't go rook d1 mainly because of this. After pawn takes, knight takes, bishop f5, I actually thought here that I don't have any way to protect my knight. But I missed knight h4. And if I saw this, and I knew it was fine, then I would have played it. And this position-wise actually much better. Because now my knight is sitting here, and there's actually not really any good progress that black can do. Because say, if black captures and go knight f6, I just go back bishop g2. And e4 doesn't do anything. The only thing it does is strengthen this knight on d3, but that's about it. Because now my bishops are actually doing a great job in terms of stopping everything. So here I probably can just play something like bishop g5, and now I have some weakness to play on, right? Or I can even play just bishop e3, because I can maybe have some potential sacrifice to just get the knight. But here, after rook e2 and f4, my knight, now black's knight is able to sit on d3, and I actually can't move my other rook, since it is actually indirectly protect my knight on f3 here. I did not notice that at first, until this move, where I realized, like, oh, I should have put this rook on d1, because now I can't move this rook. Because here I move this rook, bishop g4, and next move is pawn takes g3 is unstoppable. And my knight can't move because it's being pinned down to 2 of the rooks. So that will be just losing. So now I can only move my queenside pieces, and I went knight a4, queen e7, just improving the pieces and connecting the rooks. Bishop c3, bishop g4. And wow, when I saw this move in the game, I was like, this is a natural move, right? And it is, but this is actually inaccurate according to the engine. And like right after the game ends, and I thought over the entire game, I thought I was like worse for the entire middle game. But here I'm actually fine. It's actually better for white. It's like a 0.3. So here, knight b4, white is better. White is actually back into the game because this is the problem of the Dutch is like there are so many positional mistakes that like from both sides like it's very hard to play. And here I play c5 with the simple intention of forcing knight a6. However, I should have went with my initial thought, which is the correct line. However, I thought about it and then I didn't see far enough to justify. So the correct line is, so I trade the rooks first, and then I go a3. And knight a6 is forced. And b4, knight c7. And here, apparently I missed knight c5. Actually, I saw knight c5. But what I missed is that after b6 and knight d3, I actually have 3 attackers on the pawn. And now knight e6 is not possible because I just captured the pawn. With, I think, knight f takes e5. And now black is actually kind of just losing here. So this is why I miss. And I did not want to allow knight e6, knight d4. So I didn't know what to do. But in fact, even with what I saw in the game, which is like rook d1, just straight up trading, and queen takes, this is completely fine as well. Like knight e6, queen d3, allowing knight d4 is actually completely fine. Because actually here no, not this move. It's bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, knight to d4. Was why I miss. I didn't like this position, but this has turned out to be fine. And I don't know, I just didn't make it. But here I went c5 instead, which is actually an inaccuracy because I now have a permanent weakness on a2. Or to say, in this position, if I instead went a3, b4, c5, I will have a much better structure because a3 comes with the tempo. Alright? So after c5, knight a6. At least now that I know that this is actually still completely equal, I was relieved. Because I literally thought that like I was actually worse. Like for I don't know how much worse I get like I was in this game. So, but I was assuming that I was just worse the entire game. So, which is kind of what got me. And at this point, my board 2 and 3 are already done with the games. And I was actually affected by the result. My board 2 has the easiest draw ever in the Caro-Kann panel against the 2000. And my board 3 lost very brutally after failing to follow up on a exchange sacrifice. So here after knight a6, I went rook to rook captures, and now b4. And now after knight c7, I realized, oh, it actually did not matter. Like knight e6, knight d4 is always an idea that black can always implement. So I should have went with the other plan if I saw it. So here I went queen b3. Just, I guess, improving my queen. King h8. And rook d1, rook to f8. And then from here, for some reason, for every move that I made from here, my position kept getting worse and worse. If you guys would like to, pause the video like after I show the moves and kind of figure out why, sure. But I honestly cannot tell you why. So the moves kind of go like rook d3, knight b5, and here I'm already worse again. Not like worse, but positionally I'm just like not very comfortable here. So queen b2, knight takes c3, queen takes c3, bishop e6, and queen e2 is apparently a bad move. And what I should have done is knight b2, and after bishop captures, I go queen c3 to threatening rook a3, and after bishop e6, I go knight c4. And if of course black can't allow a knight on d6, so bishop takes, pawn queen takes, and his position is fine. I sacrifice a pawn, but this pawn is not really gonna move, and a6 doesn't really do anything. I still have, as long as I keep pieces on the board and not allowing an endgame, then there's not really good chance that black can do much with the extra pawn. So, but queen e2 is not a good move. I'm trying to protect this pawn while also preparing rook. I was trying to do. But here, knight c3, g4. And I went knight e1, which is a bad move. The only move here that allows equality is knight h4, which seems like a very risky move, and yes, it is. Because after bishop f6, knight f5, bishop takes f5, pawn takes f5. You see, like this pawn is very loose. And then I'm also allowing all these three pawns to move forward. But actually, after f3, bishop f1, I can't tell you how this is okay for white, but by the engine, it really is. I can show you a couple more moves, like because e4, rook d7, and queen e5 actually doesn't work here. I just don't know. Like knight d1 and then queen a6 is somehow a good threat. I don't understand. So yeah, this game there was so many moments I genuinely don't understand, and I can't tell you why. This is probably the hardest part in the Dutch, where it is so positional, and the mistakes are not clear at all. And in fact, I mean, you can, as you can see throughout the game, me and opponent actually make a lot of positional mistake, but both of us aren't actually very aware of it. But go back to the game after knight e1, which is now much worse for me. Bishop a, threatening f3, queen b2, bishop c4, rook to d6, knight f6, bishop f1, bishop takes f1, king takes f1, and here again, I think my opponent kind of blunder away slowly his own advantage. And here he went queen f7, trying to open up this file by like capturing my pawn and then moves this knight away and all that kind of stuff. So here I went knight e2 because I only had like 10 minutes on the clock, and we need 4 more moves to reach move 40, and this is honestly a very hard move to find. Like it's not the right move here is knight d3, and I don't really understand how it was good. So like, because when I was calculating here, I was way too scared, way too afraid of this battery ram against my king, so I didn't want to think too much about it. So I just went knight e2 as like kind of a filler move. But the main line is that after the knight e3 and f3, which is actually also kind of what I saw, I actually don't care. This is actually equal, because here after the engine said I should attack on the queen side, so say I just go b5, right? Pawn takes b5, queen takes b5, and queen h5. This is what I was really scared about. But after king h1, queen h3, and knight e1, this is somehow equal. And once again, I don't understand how. And this game is really showing me my weakness in terms of evaluating the position. And I mean, I would say like even some masters won't be able to like judge this position correctly. So, but also, here both of us are very low on time already, and again, we need to reach move 40 to gain time to keep playing. And I did not expect this game to take so long. Furthermore, here my board 4 also lost because he didn't take a free rook in a rook versus knight endgame. So I was actually a little frustrated, Actually, no, not a little frustrated. I was quite frustrated. So I kind of let that get into me. So yeah, again, we'll go back to the game after knight e2, and Bishop. I actually don't know what to do here, so I just went back knight c3 and queen c4 check. And great, I just hang a pawn, which I guess that's not much I can do. So king g1, knight takes c4, knight takes c4, queen takes c4, queen d2, queen f5, g takes f4, e takes f4. And here, this is around minus 1.5 for black. Like, black has an overwhelming positional advantage. But here, I just keep trying, I guess. If f3, g takes f3, knight takes f3, and my opponent here trying to go for a mate or something. So he went rook g8. I mean, obviously, also putting a rook on the open file against a king is really good. But what he didn't realize is that king f2, which here white is still better, black is still better. But after queen g4, I was able to go rook d8, trying to trade the rooks. And after bishop f6, rook takes, king takes, this position is equal. It's an equal queen endgame. I knew that in mind. However, for some reason, I just had to blunder. Like, I just don't know. Like, I don't know why I blundered so hard this game. So I went a3, which blundered away all of my chances to get a draw. And yeah, my opponent kind of proved it in the game. The correct move was queen d6. For stupid reason, I was scared that my pawn would be wiped away if I played this move, which is the only move and the best move. Because after queen f5, the line, I wasn't like focusing enough to realize that queen b8, king f7, queen takes b7, king g6, queen takes c6. The line keeps going with queen c2, king e1. And here I thought I will get mated, but the problem is I didn't realize that the king is getting pinned. Oh, the bishop's getting pinned to the king. So there's nothing. There's no checks on c3. So I don't know. And since that wouldn't happen, then here this is just equal. There's nothing. Like, I could just trade queens and go to an equal pawn endgame, and this game will be an easy draw. But after the a3, now black is simply better. And he found the best move, which is queen f5. Now, queen d6 does not apply anymore because I'm now a tempo down. So if I try to play queen d6, now I just play king f7. And queen c7, king g6, and queen takes b7. Now there will be mate threats with queen c2, and because now the bishop is able to move. So here, I don't know. We just kind of keep moving because I really don't know what to do. Queen e2, queen d5. Now the queen is centralized, well protected, and I don't really have any meaningful checks. King g2, king f7. So now it just like moves around. King g7, a4. I really don't know what to do anymore at this point. Queen h5, queen e4, queen g6. And after trading queens, this is a winning endgame for black, and I have no hope to play anymore. So I took and knight e1, king f5, king f3, king e5. And I stopped rotating because I know this is lost. And my opponent has 1 minute, so I was just trying to start moving really fast. Overall, I would say this is a very brutal loss. And this is probably one of the most positional games I've ever had. And after this, I am definitely going to learn the ideas. Not theory, I'm going to learn ideas against the Dutch. Because I feel like the Dutch, I can learn theory about it, but d4, f5, there are just so many different setups that black can go for. But learning the ideas are probably going to be good enough. That's the whole point of learning against like a kind of a dubious opening, because how I lost is that I didn't know how to approach the middle game. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.